I'd always loved hiking alone. There was something about stepping into the wilderness by myself, no distractions, no noise except the rustling wind or the crunch of dry leaves underfoot, that made me feel both alive and deeply connected to the earth. It was my way to disconnect from the world, to challenge myself physically and mentally, and to find some kind of quiet peace in the vastness of nature. So when late spring rolled around, I decided to explore a trail I'd heard about near Joshua Tree National Park, a lesser-known path that promised solitude and sweeping desert views. That afternoon, the sun was already high, beating down relentless and brutal, with no clouds to offer respite. I'd packed light. Just a small backpack with enough water to last a few hours, some trail mix, a hat, sunscreen, and my phone, which was only half charged. I figured I'd be back before dark. The trail was supposed to be straightforward. I started out feeling energized, the dry heat prickling my skin and the sharp scent of creosote bushes filling the air. The desert stretched endlessly in all directions. Jagged rocky outcrops rose like silent sentinels, their surfaces bleached white by the sun. Scattered among them, the twisted and spiky Joshua trees cast strange, skeletal shadows that seemed to dance as the afternoon light shifted. The earth beneath me was cracked and dry, a mosaic of dust and sand, baked so hard it seemed almost solid. I walked steadily, letting my feet find their rhythm on the uneven ground. After about an hour, I spotted a narrow side path veering off from the main trail. Something about it called to me, a promise of a better vantage point from a rocky ridge overlooking the vast desert. I decided to take it, eager for the view and the thrill of discovery. At first, the path was easy enough, winding through low shrubs and jagged stones, but as I climbed higher, it grew steeper and more rugged. Then, after a while, I began to notice something unsettling. The trail beneath my boots seemed less defined, almost swallowed by sand and loose gravel. The landscape around me started to blur into a confusing jumble of boulders and scrub. I tried to retrace my steps, but the landmarks I'd used to orient myself, an oddly shaped rock, a cluster of Joshua trees, were nowhere to be found. My heart started to race. My phone, which had been my safety net, suddenly lost all GPS signal. The screen flickered and went dark. I was completely alone in a desert that suddenly felt vast and alien. Just when the anxiety began to settle like a weight in my chest, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. A figure, barely visible through the shimmering heat haze, stood motionless against the rocky backdrop. At first, I thought it was another hiker, someone else who might be lost like me. But as I moved closer, my relief turned to dread. The man didn't shift or blink. His clothes were ragged and coated in desert dust, hanging loosely on his thin frame. His skin was pale and cracked as if sunburned and parched for weeks on end. His posture was unnaturally rigid, like a statue frozen in time. Most chilling were his eyes. Wide, glassy, staring blankly into the distance without focus, empty like hollow wells. I called out to him, my voice cracking with unease, but he didn't respond. No twitch of muscle, no movement, just that haunting, unmoving stare. The air around me seemed to grow colder, even though the sun still blazed overhead. A shiver ran down my spine, a stark contrast to the desert heat pressing on me from every side. Then, slowly, agonizingly slow, the man turned his head toward me. The movement was unnatural, almost mechanical, as if he were a puppet on strings, and then, just as I blinked in disbelief, he vanished. The spot where he'd stood was empty, the dust untouched, not a single disturbance where his feet had been. His footprints led to that place and abruptly ended, as if he'd simply been erased from existence. Frozen with fear, my heart hammered so loudly I thought it might burst through my ribs. I wanted to scream, to run, but my legs felt like they were made of lead. After a moment, I forced myself to move, stumbling over loose stones and dry bushes, desperate to find the main trail and get out before nightfall. As the sun sank below the horizon, the temperature dropped sharply and the desert transformed. The blazing heat gave way to a creeping chill, the shadows lengthened, and the eerie silence deepened. The wind died down, leaving only the sound of my ragged breathing echoing in the vast emptiness. Every rustle of brush, every distant coyote's howl, set my nerves on edge. I wandered through the darkness, disoriented and terrified, until finally, well after midnight, I was found by a search party. Their flashlights swept across the rocky terrain as they called my name, and when I emerged from the brush, I was exhausted, dehydrated, and shaking. The rescuers told me no other hikers had been reported missing in that area for months. They didn't understand what I was talking about when I described the man, or whatever he was, that had appeared and disappeared like a ghost. To them, it was just a story born from stress and fear. But I know what I saw. That figure, if he was even human, was something else. Something ancient and restless, lurking in the vast, empty desert. Even now, long after that day, the memory haunts me. The desert holds secrets no one else can see, and sometimes in the stillness between dusk and dawn, I swear I can still feel those empty eyes watching me from the shadows. Camping in the Mojave Desert had been my friend's idea. An escape from the city's endless clamor, pollution, and suffocating routines. A chance to breathe, to step into a world untouched by human hands, where the silence was as profound as the stars overhead. There were 5 of us, old friends bound by years of shared memories and struggles, and the first day was filled with laughter, easy camaraderie, and the kind of peace only nature can offer. We drove for hours, the landscape gradually shifting from concrete and asphalt to dusty plains dotted with creosote bushes and ragged Joshua trees, their twisted arms reaching like ancient sentinels into the sky. The sun was a molten ball sinking slowly into the horizon, painting the desert in molten hues of amber, rose, and violet. As night fell, the temperature dropped rapidly, the dry desert air turning cool and sharp against our skin. That first night, we pitched our tents in a small clearing surrounded by rocks and thorny bushes. The stars exploded overhead in an unimaginable brilliance. It was like staring into infinity, a vast cathedral of glittering lights piercing the black velvet sky. The Milky Way stretched overhead in a shimmering band, and constellations I had only read about in books seemed suddenly close enough to touch. And around the campfire, the desert was alive with sounds. Coyotes howled in the distance, their eerie calls echoing off the rocky outcrops. Small rodents rustled in the underbrush, the delicate crunch of their footsteps barely audible. The wind whispered softly through the Joshua trees, carrying with it the scent of dry earth, sage, and a faint hint of something else, something ancient. We fell asleep that night with a sense of deep contentment. But that peace was shattered on the second night. I don't know what woke me. Maybe it was the faint flicker of movement on the edge of my vision, or the unnatural chill that crept over my skin. Whatever it was, I opened my eyes to find a strange, flickering light glowing faintly in the distance, just beyond the ridge that bordered our campsite. It wasn't like the warm, inviting glow of a campfire or the harsh beams of car headlights. This light pulsed and shimmered unpredictably, an erratic dance of color that set my nerves on edge. At first I thought I was dreaming or imagining things, but the lights were real. I could see them, small and flickering like fireflies, scattered across the horizon. Unable to resist my curiosity, I slipped out of my tent, careful not to wake the others. The desert was cold, the air biting as I stepped away from the warmth of the fire. My flashlight's beam barely pierced the darkness, and the silence was oppressive. As I approached the ridge, more lights appeared. Hundreds of tiny points twinkled in red, green, and blue, strange, unnatural colors that pulsed rhythmically in complex patterns. They moved in waves, swirling and blinking like an alien message broadcast across the night. A low hum began to resonate beneath my feet. It was subtle at first, like the distant roar of a machine waking to life. Then it grew louder, vibrating through the cracked earth and into my bones. The sound was mechanical and steady, unlike anything natural. I felt a deep unease growing inside me. The desert heat vanished abruptly. A sudden cold seeped into the air, chilling me to the bone. My breath came out in visible puffs, each exhale a ghostly mist in the frozen desert night. The temperature drop was unnatural. Impossible for a place usually scorching under the sun and cold only when the stars were hidden. And then the fog rolled in. It came fast, a thick blanket of mist that swallowed the rocky landscape whole. The trail I'd followed was gone, erased by the creeping white haze. It was dense, unnatural, silent except for the soft crackle of static that seemed to hum in the air. The fog distorted everything. Shapes twisted and dissolved. The lights beyond flickered uncertainly, as if struggling to penetrate the thick veil. I tried to turn back, but the fog blocked my path. The trail was swallowed. The lights, once distant and tantalizing, now danced just beyond reach, swirling in hypnotic, almost intelligent patterns. They flickered and pulsed in sequences that felt like codes, impossible to decipher. I felt eyes on me, hundreds of them, invisible watchers lurking in the fog, their gaze cold and unblinking. I shivered violently, though I had no way to tell if the chill was from fear or the sudden cold air. My flashlight flickered and died. I was plunged into darkness. Time ceased to exist. Minutes, hours, I had no idea. The desert, the lights, the fog, they all blurred together into a nightmarish limbo. My mind raced, trying to hold on to reality, but it felt like slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, the fog lifted. I was alone. The lights vanished. The low humming faded. The cold air warmed slightly. The desert returned to its silent, empty self, indifferent to the terror it had just cloaked itself in. But I was nowhere near the camp. I was miles away, standing on cracked earth beneath the endless sky, the stars shining cold and distant above me. The landscape was barren and still, with no sign of the rocky ridge or the path I had taken. My legs trembled, my throat was dry, and my heart still pounded erratically in my chest. I stumbled through the darkness, disoriented and shaken, until I finally made it back to camp. My friends were frantic, searching, calling my name, worried, sick. They told me they had been looking for me for hours, fearing the worst. But when I tried to describe the lights, the fog, the cold hum, they exchanged worried glances and shook their heads. None of them had seen anything. No strange lights, no unnatural fog, no humming machine in the desert night. To them, I was just a tired, frightened camper who'd wandered off in the dark. But I know what I saw, what I felt. It wasn't just a hallucination or some trick of the mind. It was something else. Something ancient and alien, something hiding in the vast, silent desert, waiting for the curious and the unlucky. Since that night, I haven't been the same. I'm haunted by the memory of those flickering lights, the cold hum vibrating through my bones, and the cold eyes watching me from the fog. Sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, I swear I can still see those lights behind my closed eyelids and feel the chilling embrace of the desert's ghostly breath. The Mojave Desert holds its secrets tight, and sometimes it reaches out to those who dare to listen. Working as a park ranger in the Sonoran Desert was a job that demanded patience, resilience, and an ability to be comfortable with solitude. The vast, sun-scorched expanse stretched endlessly beneath a blistering sky by day and transformed into a cold, silent wilderness by night. The desert had its own rhythms, a quiet heartbeat felt rather than heard, broken only by the occasional rustle of a lizard, the distant howls of coyotes echoing against jagged mountains, or the whispered scurry of desert foxes on the hunt. I'd spent countless nights alone on patrol, the weight of responsibility heavy but somehow calming. To many, the desert was lifeless and barren, but to me, it was a living, breathing entity, ancient, unforgiving, and mysterious. I knew its secrets, or so I thought. On that night, the air was particularly still. No wind stirred the brittle scrub brush, and even the usual desert creatures seemed unusually silent. The moon hung high, full and luminous, casting long, skeletal shadows across the cracked earth. I was on foot, making my way through an old mining area long abandoned and mostly forgotten. Rusted equipment lay half buried in the dust, and crumbling wooden supports creaked faintly, warning of their precarious state. I was heading back to the ranger station when I first noticed it. A faint whisper, so soft I almost thought it was my imagination. It drifted through the night air like a breath, barely audible over the crunch of my boots on gravel. At first I dismissed it as the usual desert sounds. The wind often toyed with the rocks and dry leaves, producing eerie echoes that could sound like voices if you listened too closely. But this was different. The whispering grew louder, clearer. It wasn't wind or wildlife, it was voices. Multiple voices, overlapping, fragile and desperate. And then, unmistakably, they called my name. My heart hammered against my ribs as I froze in place. The voices were pleading, hollow and broken. "Help me, help me." Cold sweat broke out on my forehead despite the chill in the air. I scanned the darkness, the beam from my flashlight trembling slightly in my grasp. The whispers beckoned me, drawing me deeper into the shadow of the mine shafts. Forgotten tunnels dug long ago by men chasing dreams of gold and silver, now swallowed by time and neglect. The entrance loomed ahead, yawning like a black maw. The wooden supports groaned ominously, rotten from decades of exposure, barely holding back the earth's weight. I hesitated only briefly before switching on my flashlight and stepping inside. Immediately, the air thickened. It was as if the mine exhaled centuries of trapped dust and sorrow. My breath fogged in the stale darkness, and a damp chill clung to the stone walls. The beam flickered erratically, sputtering against an unseen force that seemed to suck the light away. Every instinct screamed for me to turn back, but something... fear? Curiosity? Pushed me forward. Deeper into the tunnel, the whispers swelled, surrounding me from all sides. They were clearer now, desperate, urgent. "Help me! Set me free!" I pressed on, my footsteps echoing hollowly in the confined space. Then I felt it. A cold breath against the nape of my neck, icy and wet, like the exhale of a drowning man. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Only shadows shifting and curling in the fading light. Suddenly, something brushed past my arm, cold, clammy, and impossibly fast. It sent a jolt of panic racing through my veins. I tried to catch a glimpse of whatever it was, but it vanished into the darkness like smoke. A guttural scream erupted from the depth of the shaft, a sound unlike anything human. It was raw, agony mixed with rage, a cry that seemed to tear the very air apart. The walls vibrated with the intensity of it, and I stumbled backward, heart pounding wildly, adrenaline surging through my body. I didn't stop to think. I bolted, running blindly through the dark tunnels, the whispers chasing me, their cries twisting into an eerie chorus. Branches scraped at my face, rocks shifted beneath my feet, and the rotten wood groaned as if warning of collapse. Finally, I burst out into the cold desert night, gasping for breath, sweat slicking my skin despite the chill. The desert was silent once more, as if holding its breath in the aftermath. Back at the ranger station, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me. The whispers haunted my ears, invading my dreams with desperate pleas for release. I lay awake for hours, the shadows in the corners of my room twisting into fleeting shapes that disappeared when I looked directly at them. The next morning, I returned with a team of fellow rangers and spelunkers, determined to find the source of the voices, to face whatever haunted that forgotten mine. But when we reached the site, the entrance was gone. The earth where it had yawned open just the night before was now a solid, unbroken stretch of desert floor. No sign of the rotten timbers, no dark hollow. It was as if the mine had never existed. We searched for hours, but the place was erased, wiped clean by some unseen hand. I still hear the whispers. Sometimes, when the desert wind stirs at night, I swear they call my name. Soft, distant, pleading. And I wonder, how many others have heard the desert's whispers and never returned to tell the tale? If these bone-chilling tales of the desert's hidden horrors left you breathless, haunted by the eerie silence between each word, remember, this is only the beginning. The dunes stretch endlessly, and every shadow holds a story waiting to claw its way into the light. So before you turn away, smash that like button if your pulse raced, share this video with fellow thrill seekers brave enough to wander into the unknown, and subscribe to channel the darkness lurking at the edges of your screen. Every click pulls you deeper into the abyss, and we're just getting started. Now here's where you come in. The desert doesn't whisper only to the lost. It speaks to those who listen. Have you felt its gaze, heard its hollow cries? Maybe you've stumbled upon a forgotten trail, felt an unnatural chill under the midday sun, or glimpsed something impossible in the corner of your eye. Whatever it was, a flicker of movement in the void, a voice without a source, a shadow that followed you home. We want to hear it. Share your own encounter in the comments below, or send us a message shrouded in secrecy. Your story could be the key to unraveling the desert's oldest curse, or the spark that ignites our next nightmare. And to those who've already braved the wasteland with us, thank you. Your courage fuels this journey into the unknown. Don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss a descent into the abyss. Follow us into the darkness on social media, where we dissect clues, share survivor sketches, and dare to ask, what's really out there? Check the description for links, hidden codes, and a map to the void, if you dare. As the stars fade and the first light of dawn creeps over the horizon, remember this. The desert never forgives, and it never forgets. It watches, it waits, and it hungers for the curious. So keep your boots laced, your water supply full, and your mind sharp. The next story is already breathing down your neck. A half-formed shape in the fog, a flicker of light where none should exist, a whisper that slithers into your dreams. Until next time, wanderers, tread carefully. The line between reality and nightmare is thinner than a rattlesnake's hiss, and in the desert, nothing stays buried forever.